A very good afternoon to all the participants of today's webinar on Tally Knowledge Series presents Tally as a tool for effective GST and TDS compliance. So, in fact, I would be running you all through this two various topics, how we can use Tally as effectively for the purpose of one, the GST compliance, which is we all know that GST ever since its inception, it has been a compliance-oriented law which calls for online submission of information. A lot of returns are required depending on the type of registration. So, and everything is online and timely plus accurate, timely submission as well as accurate data submission are critical. Otherwise, there can be financial implications, emanating due to either delay in the filing or filing of inaccurate data. So that being the scenario, so maybe we can actually explore how we can do the respective configurations in GST under Tally in an effective manner so that whatever data is keyed in will be return ready to a great extent as and when data is pulled into the system. So we will be looking into the quick fundamentals with respect to the, from the compliance perspective, what are the various configurations which would be required. And we will be taking you through practical illustrations as well. And how do we use this GST statutory report feature, which is there in Tally, to compare and analyze whether any difference is there between the entire data which is being entered and that which is flowing to my return data. So, and if there are such mismatches, how do we handle this mismatch? And also, while doing the configurations, what can be the optimal mix? So these are the various aspects which we would be covering through today's first part of the session. Of course, it covers the majority part of the content is with respect to this. We also will touch upon the TDS compliance related aspects, how we can use the configurations in Tally and how TDS transactions could be accounted and how the necessary reports could be generated.
So I would like to just repeat on this, like today we would be going through this, how we can effectively use Tally for GST compliance and also for the TDS compliance per se. And as far as GST compliance is concerned, since we have all understood and experienced till now that GST has been a very much compliance oriented law, which calls for online compliances of various return filings, not only in a timely manner, but accuracy is also a must. That being the case, we should avoid human errors to the extent possible. Wherever system can take care, I think we should use the system itself to do those certain things which are defined, predefined, and we actually know it is it is in a particular manner, and only human analytics should be used only wherever system cannot take care of it, or we would prefer to have it that way, so that we can minimize the errors, human errors to a great extent, and also quick and reliable information can be generated with respect to the statutory inputs which needs to be provided as part of the compliance process. Now, how do we in fact do a trade-off between where we need to go for the software and where human analytics is required? In fact, wherever it is predefined tasks, we can definitely take help of the software. And if these changes are incorporated at the root level itself, so when I'll be touching upon the configurations part, so I'll be touching upon how configuration can help us derive the necessary outputs which is return ready. And as far as software is concerned, volume doesn't matter. 100 entries, 1000 entries, 10,000 entries, software can just handle it irrespective of the volumes. And one important aspect we all must, we all know it, that if we key in a wrong information, definitely we'll get a wrong output. So garbage in is garbage out. So we need to be careful while doing this content input into the software. Otherwise, in fact, earlier days when we used to, initial periods of accounting system where manual books were there, the biggest challenge would be whether trial balance has tallied. But today we don't see that issue of whether trial balance has tallied or not. But the bigger challenge is there could be a wrong tallying of the trial balance, meaning like the heads could have been misplaced because an automatic double entry system where auto posting happens through the softwares. So the challenges are like we have to identify whether data is keyed in properly. So that being the case, that challenge we definitely have whenever we use software. Probably a review of the process will definitely help us to locate even such kinds of errors. Now, coming to the human analysis part, as I said, not everything can be predefined, or some of the things which intuitive, or we call it a sixth sense, or the skills which we develop over experience. I'm sure there is this artificial intelligence coming over, the robotic accounting automation, all that is happening, the bots which are coming in. There are quite sophisticated tools which are getting developed, which can imitate the human brain to a great extent. But yes, even beyond that, there would definitely be place for we humans, because those skills we have is an inculcated skills which we have developed over a period of time, and definitely a machine can never replace a human being. So that being the case, be it the application of mind, be it the intuitive experiences we have, so definitely those areas we would definitely require the human beings and human analytics to be used. However, if volumes are there, or if the transactions, like there could be always scope for human errors, that aspect is also there. So likewise, we see that whenever we use a software, or whether it is a manual work, there is pros and cons in both the things. We need to understand and mitigate the factors accordingly. Now coming to this GST configurations, so we will be running through the quick fundamentals, the importance of configurations and how it will impact, and the various levels of configuration: company level, inventory level, group level, accounting level, transaction level. And also we'll be running you through practical illustrations of how exactly the configuration will impact when we record a transaction, and how Tally offers flexibility plus a predefined set of things, and also facilitates mismatch management. So this also we will see what happens if at the transaction level, if I override, so where it will get reported and how to pick up that data and reanalyze and finalize my return. All these will be covered today, especially with specific focus on mismatch management with respect to GSTR 3B and 1. These are the most filed returns by the regular registered person. So we have taken up some of the examples of how mismatches occurs and how it can be resolved. Finally, deciding on an optimal mix of configurations, which would be ideal, because a trade-off is required between the number of ledgers we want to have, while the versus the return ready information which we need to prepare. In fact, Tally being one of the most popular accounting software, especially in the MSME sector, as far as this GST is concerned, it has been greatly supportive to a great extent. Various legal requirements, statutory requirements has been incorporated in Tally as far as the configuration and generation of return ready reports are concerned. So some of the handy features which Tally has is GSTIN validation. So based on the 15-digit GSTIN, which have the state code, the next 10 digits being the PAN, and the last 3 digits being the control numbers. So it has the feature of GSTIN validation, and it will allow like multiple level configurations for all my, be it stock ledgers. Either I can do it at the company level, or in group level, ledger level, stock item level. It allows me that flexibility of multiple level configurations. And even if I want to override it for a particular transaction, so that data entry or accounting per se should not get impacted. So that being the case, that flexibility is offered, and it will also generate the mismatch report and mismatch summary, so that we know which particular transactions to focus, and clear off those mismatches, and so that we can go ahead with the return filing smoothly. Of course, there is some more support which can be expected from Tally, maybe the next coming versions, which will help us, and Tally will help the professionals in a much more better manner. So, in fact, as far as the fundamentals for GST, configuration setup is concerned, so this is the basic, like we will have to enable the GST feature in Tally and the master setups. So all the ledger masters or the inventory masters or the customer and vendor masters and even the duty ledgers or the tax ledgers like the CGST, SGST, all these things. The master setup is a very important aspect. This is where we have to pay a proper attention whenever a new master is created. If it is appropriately configured, then it's all done. A well begun is half done. That's what we say. So that's how it is. If we configure things appropriately, I think majority of the task will be done. Now, coming to the transactions at the time of, as I said, at the transaction level also, if the configuration and the data entry doesn't match with each other, Tally does allow the flexibility to override. We will look into this in a practical way as and when we dwell in further. Now, what are the broad areas of configuration which is required in Tally as far as GST is concerned? We should firstly understand, whenever we create any particular ledger, there could be this broad three categories. One is GST applicable, another one is GST not applicable, another one is GST undefined. So I'll explain. Once we select that GST is applicable, it will ask for the further configurations. If we select GST not applicable, then we are indicating that it is a transaction which is either not a supply or it is not covered under GST itself. All these things, I put in some examples like dividend income, salary payments. These are outside the purview of GST. So we might prefer choosing it as a GST not applicable. But let's say we do not provide any, either we will neither choose GST applicable nor choose GST not applicable. The system will still allow me to create a master. It will say GST is undefined. So that is the configuration which this provides. So if I choose GST is applicable, it will allow me to do further configurations. Now, what are these further configurations? I can either configure that ledger as inter or intra. So let's say I have sales ledger which I've configured. Either I can specifically make it as interstate sales ledger or intrastate sales ledger. Or if I do not want, I simply want to have a single ledger called sales ledger, and based on the party GST number, let the system pick and decide whether it is intrastate or interstate sales. That is also possible. But if I want a specific, like if I take that ledger report, I want the entire summation of how much is my inter and intrastate sales figure. So I just want, if the business requirement be so that I want a separate ledger itself for that, then it still allows that to do. And if it is a registered or unregistered person, so let's say we are configuring a GTA ledger, that is carriage inwards. Now, if he is a registered person, then he will raise the invoice, reverse charge invoice, and I will be discharging. If he is unregistered, I'll have to raise a self invoice and in fact discharge even the GST in this regard. I mean, since it's all the professional members who are part of this webinar, I'm presuming that they're aware of all these kinds of GST transactions which will come in. I'm only touching upon how to correlate it to the configurations so that we can have a written ready information. So the registered and then taxable versus exempt. If I'm using a specific ledger called sales taxable, and further I want to do it like at 18% separately, that is also possible. Sales exempt, so where there is no GST rates for that, it is an exempted goods or service. Again, well, even that is allowed. So once I choose taxable, it will further ask me the rate, and if it is under RCM. So if, as I said, if I'm selecting a GTA service, let's say I'm BRL and I'm configuring the, I'm a logistics company, I'm creating a sales ledger and and I'm configuring it as a reverse charge, so that although I am collecting the money or for the services rendered, I will not be collecting the taxes part. It will enable computation on reverse charge basis where the recipient will supply. This will hold good even for my inward supply, where I will be in fact required to discharge taxes. Even that case I can enable whether it is an RCM, and I can discharge the taxes. So this feature is also there. And in case of input tax credit ledgers, it will further help me enable whether ITC is eligible. So ITC is eligible or not, that is, let's say if it is a block credit, let's say I purchased a car, since and I'm a businessman and I purchased a car, since it is a block credit under section 17(5), in Tally we can configure if that ITC is also ineligible, and that will flow into the appropriate written column and for the 3B purpose. And if let's say I am a supplier of petrol, diesel or oil, which is non-GST or alcoholic liquor for human consumption, so that I can configure it as non-GST also, be it outward supply or be it inward supply. So to shortlist and give you an overall picture, these are the multifarious configuration options which Tally gives in for you to enable you to configure that particular ledger in the fashion you want. And even if you do not configure in such a detailed manner also, to whatever level you configure, Tally is flexible enough to pick up such kind of an information and act accordingly. And one important thing to note here is the moment you classify something as GST not applicable, or if you do not even configure a ledger, you just create a ledger and leave it at that without doing any GST configurations, in the return related reports, it will go and sit in the portion called not relevant for returns. In the due course of time, I have shared we have taken some screenshots. We will be sharing you for a better picture on the same. Now coming to the levels of configuration. In fact, how does this rate setup hierarchy works? Let's say we are a consultant firm. Our all services gets covered under 18%, and let's say the HSN is 99. Under our services, we have audit services, bookkeeping services, consultation services, all these variety of services which we provide. I want to, at the company level itself, set up as a single 18% rate. I don't want to, at the ledger level, again, set up for everything as 18%, 18%. I only want to do one-time configuration at the company level itself. So I'll go ahead and do a company level configuration. If I do not do further configurations at the either at the inventory level or accounts level or the transaction level, it will derive its configurations from the company level setup, whatever we do. Next level, if we think the inventory level, wherever accounts are maintained with inventory, again we have two options there. Either we can configure at the group level or we can configure at the item level. If we configure at group level and do not do it at item level, again that item derives its rates and other configurations from the group. But if you create specifically for item, it will override. So again, that's a beautiful feature which is there. We can use that however we want. Again, this scenario applies for a ledger. Let's say I have sales ledger. Let's say sales is the group. Under sales group, I have sales interstate, sales intrastate, sales of registered persons, sales of unregistered, or B2B, B2C. So we have 4 ledgers, let's presume for time being. My product itself is 18%. So all my sales is 18%. I will configure the group of, the group sales itself as 18%. Further, when I create interstate sales, intrastate sales, B2B sales, B2C sales, these ledgers, I will create under the group sales for sure. I want that individual ledgers to derive its character from the group sales, I will not further configure anything in the ledger level. So it will derive it from there. But let's say there is one product which is at 5%. So I want to have a sales at 5% and I will specifically configure it at 5%. Although it is part of the group which is configured at 18%, since the ledger is configured at 5%, that overrides. And further, let's say at the transaction level, there is I collect a round figure, once I select, let's say 12%, there is a figure that is appearing, but that is not a round figure. So I'll collect round figure from the customer. Instead of using the round off ledger, let's say I want to alter the CGST, SGST itself. Tally allows even that flexibility of altering it, but definitely it will trigger a mismatch saying that percentage and the figures not match. So the overall perspective why I'm trying to explain you is, at one side it offers flexibility, at the other side it will prompt for the mismatch report so that we can continue to do the transactions without stopping because of these conditions and configurations and stuff. But at the same time, at the time of filing the returns, we can review our work of data entry, what has happened, anything is is not flowing into the return, and take action accordingly. So at the company level, the 4 things can be configured with respect to GST. One is the GST number of the company, rate. As I said, if it's a consulting firm, they may choose a company level rate of 18%. HSN, I just said like 99, the first 2 digits, if a turnover is below 1.5 crores, no requirement of HSN at all. 1.5 to 5 crores, we have 2-digit requirement, and above 5 crores, it is 4-digit requirement. So I might choose selecting an HSN of 99. And if reverse charge is applicable for all the services rendered by the company, then at the company level itself, we can configure. Coming to this inventory level configuration, I can configure the name, the rate, HSN, even UQC, the unique quantity code, like the bags, packets, numbers, all these, any UQC, what we want, we can configure. Similarly, group level, group name, rate, HSN, whether reverse charge. Account level, the ledger name, rate, HSN, UQC. Transaction level, we can override the tax rate. We can even override the HSN. This is how the configuration works. So this is the company level configurations. A picture, as I said, if I want to use at the company level itself, this 18%, I can configure it right over there. Coming to this inventory level configuration, as I said, if you look at the SKUs here, there is this paper boat, which is the group itself is at 12%. So then whatever is added under this group, it will automatically get it selected as 12%. But let's say in part of the in a group, partly there is a separate rate and partly there is an there's a 12% and 5% rate. I can again go ahead and configure item level and use the respective rates. That is also possible. As I was telling you, how we can configure the UQC, that is the unique quantity code. These are the standard drop down of UQC which the GST portal allows us. So let's say there is there are these various things, but you want something else which is not there here, and let's say you want like quintal. Maybe you want to say QNL. So you can still write that and link it to this itself. So whatever name you want to give, you can give it here, but map it to the drop down here. So that is possible. Now this is the group level configuration. Given an example of lawn mowers, let's say all lawn mowers are coming under 12%. So automatically whatever we create under lawn mowers will pick up the same rate. So at the transaction level, if I want to override at the transaction level, Tally has a feature of F11 and F12 for almost all the screens. Wherever you want to alter configurations at that level, you can press in these 2 keys and explore what are the possibilities. While creating a sales transaction, if you press F12 and look at the additional configuration, under the statutory options, you have something called as allow modification of tax details of GST. So sometimes you make a purchase and the vendor might have rounded off the input figures over there. But if you configure, software will pick as per the percentage. Some minor variation might be there. Maybe you want to override and match it to the invoice per se. So in such a case, you can allow this modification. And once we click on that, it will even allow me to change what kind of a transaction. Let's say by default, it's a sales interstate transaction. There's a one rare occasion of where one intrastate transaction also happened. let's say I'm a wholesale dealer where only interstate transactions I'm dealing. But incidentally, one transaction happened sales of local. So I don't want to create another ledger, but I want to use the same ledger and at the transaction level, I want to override. It allows that. So classification can also be overridden, reverse charge applicability, assessable value, tax rate, all these, overriding options are available. Similarly, we can have the duty ledgers here. Again, it is the choice of the users. They can have output CGST, output SGST, output IGST separately, or and also input CGST, input SGST, input. We can have 6 ledgers, 3 for output, 3 for input, or we can have only 3 ledgers. Say CGST, both input output. I'll use the same thing, but yes, you will have issues whenever you have credit notes and debit notes. And also purchases, everything being tracked. So personally, I would feel having 6 ledgers is still a good option of outputs, having it like output CGST and output input CGST ledgers separately. Coming to the outward supply transactions, in fact, if we look at the GST law per se, it allows so many variety of transactions. If it is a branch transfer or it's a deemed exports, exports under LUT, exports, with payment of duty, the ACZ supplies, and interstate, intrastate. These, as I said, configuring it to B2B, B2C, all these possibilities are there. We can select the appropriate category over here, and so that the ledger behaves accordingly. So this is a picture of how an intrastate invoice, does appear. Just a little bit of basics. And it allows us to do multiple rates invoices as well. In a single transaction, we can definitely key in multiple rates. So we have a concept of bill to ship to under in the GST law, where billing is done to one party while shipment is done to another party to save on the logistic costs. So many a times we use this bill to ship to module. So even that can be configured in Tally by using a advanced level configuration of allow separate buyers and consignee names. So then that's how we get the details of this. And similarly, like we can configure the various percentages also if we wanted. So just another example for interstate sales. So as I said, here the key is your nature of transaction. You have to choose if you are doing a specific ledger wise, various creation of ledgers. This for a sales exempt, where we will select the nature as sales exempt. So just an example of intrastate exempt invoice. So in fact, a bill of supply needs to be raised, and accordingly we can do the configurations as well. So if we look at the interest received on FD or fixed deposits or term deposits for that matter, that is also treated as supply under GST because it is a use of money. So services definition cover that. So that gets covered under supply, and that being but there is a specific exemption in notification 12/2017. Serial number 27 provides exemption with respect to this interest payments. Interest income kind. So that being the case, we have to still raise a bill of supply. We need to gross it up and raise a bill of supply. So, we can configure the voucher type as bill of supply, interest received. Any TDS is done, we should ensure that it is grossed up. So coming to the reverse charge, computations and all that, wherever the transactions fall within the reverse charge compliance mechanism, there are certain expenses like the GTA services, the legal expenses, the expenses, the services received from the lawyers and advocates, and the security services. Recently from I think 1st January 2019, the security services also got covered therein. From 1st of October 2019, the hiring of a car service is also got covered under the reverse charge mechanism. So things are getting added up to the reverse charge compliances. And one important thing to note, and one of the areas which is poorly handled, or it's a neglected, or not so compliant area is, although they do the reverse charge compliances by filling in the appropriate tables under 3B, they discharge the tax, and wherever they're eligible, they even claim the eligible credits. But we should know that whenever there is a claim of credit, there should be an underlying credit claim document. So that being the case, the credit claim document is very, very critical. In other cases, we will have the supplier invoices, but in case of reverse charge expense discharge, it is we are discharging as a recipient. So the law states that if you are procuring services from an unregistered person, goods or services from an unregistered person that is subject to the reverse charge levy, then you are required to maintain something called as self invoice. So you have to generate a self invoice on yourself, and that is the proof of credit claim document. So it's very important we integrate all these records in a single software, so that we need not run around whenever details are asked for. But while doing the transaction entries, let's say a carriage inward payment is done or an expense is booked, at the time of transactions, we don't know, or the person doing the data entry might not be aware of these statutory provisions of how to do this and all of that. Because if the amount is below 750, there is an exemption. But same party, if it is above 750, then it is taxable under reverse charge. So all these being the case, maybe monthly once, just before we file the returns, we can consolidate all the reverse charge payments. Anyways, once we configure that, we already get that report from in the tally under the table 3.1b. We can just refer that and review our ledgers once to see whether at all any reverse charge transactions are there. And if they are there, so then we need to raise a self invoice. So you might get this question, if already transaction is passed, if we again create another voucher, doesn't it lead to double posting? So you're right that if we create a regular voucher, it definitely count like double counting or double posting. So that being the case, we'll have a huge issue. So Tally has something called as optional vouchers, where it will create a voucher which will be only visible, but it will not have a posting effect. So if we use these optional vouchers, we can create the self invoice and maintain the series accordingly, and even we need to report this in table 13 of GSTR1. It will come handy even in for that aspect. So we have created one self tax invoice as a voucher type. We can use the sales type, we can use the purchase type or the sales type as the configuration. We have used the sales type here, so that all the data which we require will be we will be getting all those fields. And anyways, we have made it as an optional voucher, so it will report as an optional voucher. It will not have the posting effect. Even there is options of reversing journals and all which can be used, but we found this is a easier way to maintain the self invoices and done the same. So 194 RCM example also has been provided. Of course, from 1st of April 2019, 94 is relevant only for the real estate sector. So if they want a consolidated one, self invoice month wise, they can still do it. So we have given a couple of examples of interstate, intrastate, how it can be generated. Now, as and when we make the reverse charge related transactions, so it is important that even a GST payment voucher is created. So this is again a requirement by the law. If we look at section 31(3) subsection subclause G of the CGST Act, it says that whenever you make a payment to a person from whom you receive the reverse charge supplies, you are required to issue a GST payment voucher. We should consider here that it is not the regular accounting payment voucher, but a separate GST payment voucher. This is relevant only with respect to RCM suppliers. So in this case, it is again ideal to create an optional voucher and report this in our GSTR1 table 13, so that month-wise we will get all these information in Tally itself. So we have a track of what are the transactions and how many optional vouchers, how many payment vouchers, everything will be available at one place, not scattered in Excel, some of things Excel, some physical documents. Instead of that, we can have everything at one place integrated. So once we create this transaction, again we need to configure this as a purchase type, the GST payment voucher, so that we get all the requisite fields. But although it's a payment voucher, but presently this can be done as per the existing features of Tally. Of course, there are a lot of TDS which can be developed, or you can personalize your requirements and get this done as well. But as is basis, we can use the optional vouchers to get this thing done. I was telling you that in case of transactions like dividend received, where there are no GST implications because securities is outside the purview of GST, because neither goods nor services both of cover the securities, both have excluded this securities word. That being the case, we have to select the configuration called not applicable with respect to dividend received. So, these are some of the critical points which I already covered in my previous slides. So this by and large covers my, compliances with respect to outward supply. So RCM is, it's my discharge also, my credits also. So we covered that in the outward supply category itself. So the classification of inward supply, again, the same, in fact, we have a huge drop down here as to what are the various possibilities that are, kind of configuration of a particular purchase ledger is possible. So we can select, the appropriate tax, the nature of transaction from the list available. So in case of an import of services, let's say, I am procuring some consultation services from a architect firm, which is there in, let's say, England. So I have some building which I'm getting constructed. I'm procuring the consultation services of designing of the building from a firm in England. So this will be a transaction which will be subject to GST and a reverse charge mechanism owing to section 5(3) and the notification 10/2017 IGST. So this would be required to be covered under reverse charge mechanism. So what I'll do is I will create the ledger, and the nature of transactions I'll select as imports taxable, and I will very importantly enable the option is reverse charge taxable, yes, so that the data can flow into the respective category in the returns. And once I pass this transaction entry, that automatically flows to my return related information. Now again, coming to this, freight charges, which is paid like carriage inwards or carriage outwards, which is paid and which is covered under 93 RCM, and the rate is 5%. Here again, I will indicate yes, the reverse charge is applicable, so that the appropriate configurations happen. So this is how we can pass an transaction where RCM is involved, because there is an input as well as output. So probably we can use a single ledger to record both of these. I meant a single journal entry can be used to record both output and input because it's an RCM transaction. Similarly, we have this interstate, this is an intrastate fleet charges. The other one was interstate. Again, here also we will enable reverse charge, yes. Entry will be CGST, SGST, same input and output that will come in here. So let's say the person who is providing the services is a non-GTA. So there is the reverse charge is applicable only if the services are procured from a GTA. So let's say there is a owner from driver kind of a person who owns one track or something, and we are procuring services from him. He doesn't issue the consignment note, so he is not a goods transport agent covered as per the definition or the definition given in the notification 11/2017. So that being the case, we'll have to treat it as an exempt supply, and we'll have to configure it this way. And since it is an exempt supply, there is no question of reverse charge applicability on the same. Could be another case of free charges less than 250. This is also less than 750 per transaction. This is also getting covered under serial number 21 of notification 12/2017, which provides a specific exemption, like with respect to agricultural products, newspapers, milk, and where value of the services is below 750 with respect to this GTA services, there is an exemption. So we might be willing to create a separate ledger itself to incorporate these things. So again, as I said, from 1st January to 2019, security services also got covered here. So we have just shown a comparison of intrastate and interstate transaction. Both we have enabled it as yes, so that we can discharge the tax at 18%. This is a regular, forward charge transaction where I'm purchasing some, goods or procuring certain services from outside the state, and the various rates we can configure these things also accordingly. We saw that it was 18%. This is at 12%. So rate-wise configurations we can do. And if at all it is exempt, again, if we want an interstate and intrastate, these are very critical, because there is this table 5 of GSTR 3B where we need to give in the information with respect to exempt inward supplies as well, and that we need to further bisect into intrastate and interstate. If we do these configurations appropriately and do the recording also under those specific ledgers, so all that will flow to my return information in the statutory reports, and I can further extract that content and simply file off my JSON and be done with it. So that is why the key, once we configure it under the appropriate heads, it will go and get reported in the appropriate statutory reports in the various respective tables, so that at the time of return filing, I need not juggle with, okay, what are the transactions for this month, which will fall where. A lot of manual work can be avoided if we do the configurations right from the initial stage itself. So similarly, we have this, again, expense ledger. So the last slides, we refer to the trading transactions where I'll be accounting on my purchases part. This we have picked up one indirect expense head where, it's a printing and stationery. Again, there could be multiple rates in that. If we want to configure rate wise, we can do that. Or if we want to allow manually, keying in input ledgers, we can still do that. There will be an overriding option to override that alert which pops out. So this is an intrastate expense head. And similarly, if we want to have a separate interstate also, we can have it. Yeah, but these would be preferred to have because of that, in requirement to be reported under table 5 of GSTR 3B. So if if it is an exempt, purchase exempt, then interstate or intrastate purchase exempt also appropriately if we configure, as I said, it will flow to my table 5. Now we have some fuel expenses, that is a non-GST goods. So petrol charges for the vehicles, or some for the generator it is used. So likewise they will have the fuel expenses, so that needs to be configured as non-GST goods. So that will again go and sit appropriately. Again, if it is intrastate, interstate, it will be go and get reflected in my table 5 appropriately. So we have this salaries paid. In fact, as I said, it is a schedule 3 item, so it is outside the purview of GST. So we might well select it as not applicable. However, the post annual returns GSTR 9, it provides for an instruction in annual return which states that even no supplies needs to be reported as part of the annual return, reporting per se under non-GST supply. Now a question arises, we have non-GST word being used in the returns, both in 3B, in the GSTR 1, even in annual return. Many places it is being used, but it is not defined in the provisions of the law as such. Provisions of the law uses the word non-taxable goods, but return uses the word non-GST goods. Now in the instruction to annual return says, under non-GST you also fill in no supply items also. So do we have to give our entire trial balance as part of our GST returns, where even salary paid or any other non-GST items also will be segregating and reporting? I mean, it's a it's a call which needs to be taken to the extent of maintaining such information and reporting it on a time to time basis. So, but yes, we need to decide on this, or if we choose that, we will go by as a, since it is it is not applicable and we would not be reporting these kinds of transactions, then we might very well choose not applicable. Then we have this, let's say if I go to a hotel, or if I buy some food materials, then the input tax credit on such food is restricted or blocked. So how can I configure that? No, the nature of transaction is purchase taxable. In fact, the taxability and is reverse charge applicable? No, it's a forward charge only. But am I eligible for input tax credit? Here it is yes, but I will change that to no. So once I do that in the returns under 17.5 category, it will get reflected. So as I started the presentation today, like I was explaining about how, although a lot of things can be taken care by the software per se, there are still scope where human analysis would be required. One is this creditor aging related reversals along with interest, because we need to keep a track of when did we avail it, when did we reverse, when that 180 days got exceeded, and which particular month we reversed. Even though there is a feature under Tally where we get the creditor aging report, but some amount of human exercise would be required to keep a track of which month. Either we have to completely automate everything, including the return filing and all the related aspects, and every figure that goes to my return should have a substantiation and explanation, or we create the JSON files which are available based on the configurations, extract the Excel reports, then do some our workings on it, and then file it. So creditor aging related reversals, again, as to the extent as is there in the present scenario, we have to manually incorporate those things. We also have this common credit reversals. Let's say we have a rent, audit fee, or consultation fees which is paid, and our business has both taxable as well as exempt goods. So these all credits become common credits, and to the extent of exempt supplies, I need to reverse it. So one is on a month to month basis, we need to do these D1, D2 reversals, what we call in compliance with rule 41 and 42. At the same time, rule 42 and 43, I'm so sorry. At the same time, a YTD reversal is, or the true up, what we call, like for the whole year, we need to arrive at the taxable supplies and exempt supplies and do this YTD reversals as well. So these are the things where we have to keep a track of these things manually and do it. And some other reversals, let's say we claim something on which we were not supposed to claim it, so now we are reversing it. Or we do not have the document, we just realize that although there is a credit and everything, but we do not have a proper physical invoice through which we are eligible for it, so we want to reverse it. So in any other reasons for reversals, we have to manually keep track and do it. Again, interest calculations, if we are filing it late, or last month invoice we are reporting it now, all these areas again requires human intervention over there. And any amendments which are there, like there was an error at the time of keying in the data, as I said, garbage in, garbage out. Later on it was realized that okay, there was a wrong data which was input, it was rectified, and the differential effect has to be given. Again, this we need to route it through a human work. So I was telling you, like I was sharing with you, like how we can extract this creditor aging analysis report. We can use the display statement of accounts outstanding and payables and set the particular days. So here we have set more than 180 days. So once we select that, we will get a display of whatever is above 180 days. So likewise, we get a display of less than 180 days and greater than 180 days, and we can accordingly fix it up. Then as I was talking that, at the transaction level also we can override. In fact, it says that central tax and state tax and amount, we have some issues. So that being the case, either we have to do a rate check or the value check, whatever is the error, we need to look into it and rectify. But for the time being, I am busy. I just want to finish this data entry and be done with it. So then I can accept, override, or come back. So if I accept it, accept with conflicts and resolve later. So if we are doubtful about this transaction, but for the time being we want to close it, we will just accept with conflict so that later time it will pop up in my mismatch reports and I can look into this. But if I'm clear that, okay, this is a transaction based on my physical invoice, I want to take it irrespective of the fact that it is not matching with the percentage. So I know I will not, I don't want to review this later. So I'll override. I want this system to accept without conflicts. So I will do that. Or if I realize that, oh, it's a data entry error, I want to correct it now itself. So I can go back and make the correction and again save it. So at transaction level, these three facilities are there where we can either accept it with conflicts, accept without conflicts, or go back and correct. So as I was sharing that these are the statutory reports which we get to look into. So here we have, in fact, there are no incomplete or mismatch of the information. If we look at the next slide, here we come to know that there are two mismatches. So this data is ready otherwise, but there are two mismatches in this written. So this is the 3B mismatch we are looking at. Now, if we do not resolve this, it is like there is some more data which probably did not flow to my written. So before generating a JSON file, it is very important that we check whether there is anything else which is to be resolved. Otherwise, there will be incorrect data which will be flowing to my 3B return. So if we select GST not applicable, or if we do not define at all, it will go and sit in my not relevant for returns. So that either we have deliberately chosen it as not applicable. I gave you the example of dividend received or salaries paid, or I did not define the configurations for certain ledgers. So also it will be good practice to have a look once at this transactions which are not coming into not relevant for returns. See, there could be some bank payments, contra entries. These things we can filter it off. We know, okay, this should not come to the returns. But there could be some expense vouchers which are configured in such a way that it should not flow to the returns. A quick review of both of these things would be required. One, the not relevant for returns. Another one, though, very important, incomplete or mismatch in the information to be resolved. So the drill down of these transactions will show me that, okay, I have treated this transaction as an imports taxable category, but I am selecting here state. So there is a place of supply issue. So once I remove this and put the particular country from which it is coming, then my mismatch will be resolved and my data will be fine. So that credit, probably it is a bill of entry related credit which should come in there, that will come. Similarly, we have this export related transaction where the nature of transaction, taxable value and tax rate is not matching. So we have either this taxable, sales is taxable, and based on value it is not matching. So these kinds of issues, it will highlight what is the kind of error also we can correct that and do the rectifications. Now similarly, this is a purchase related transaction where in fact the tax amount is not matching with the rate of tax. As I said, there could be overriding. So it is also showing me the difference. How much should be as per calculation? How much should be as per the how much is as per actually entered figure? Now this is the difference. So we can ask the team to check the voucher, physical voucher, cross verify and see what is the correct amount, and then resolve it and move further so that return is proper. So similarly, we are looking here, till now we saw the GSTR 3B summary. Now we are looking the GSTR 1 statutory report. Again, we see some incomplete or information with respect to with this particular return. We can also see that how much of the HSN is included, how much of the HSN SSC information is not provided, so that table 12 of GSTR 1, we need to provide the HSN related information. Even annual returns, we have table 17 and 18 where we have to provide the HSN related information. So that being the case, it's very, very important that we do all these validations and then generate the JSON file so that all my tables speak the same language and the same figures are reflected and there is no discrepancy, because the moving further, things are going to be like system data analytics will pitch in. Let's say you have given some figures in your outward supplies not reported in HSN. Probably system might pick that case for the scrutiny that there is some information mismatch which is being recorded and all that. So to avoid all those instances, it is always better to validate the entire data which is flowing into my returns. And as I say, as we can see, Tally also give us these kind of exceptional highlighting of the things where we can focus on those aspects, rectify it at that level, and get the return ready content. So here if we see there are 6 mismatches. On drilling down, we get to see this screen, and further drill down, it is telling that okay, GST number not provided. It is sales is configured as registered person sales, but GST number related information is not provided, or in other case it is like HSN is not provided here, or table wise information. So it is an export customer, probably have not filled in my shipping bill number, shipping bill details, all that port code, etc. And in the other 4 cases, it is like for an intrastate transaction, I have put CGST, interstate transaction, I might have put CGST, SGST. So likewise, these could be the various errors which are coming in. So, I mean, as I said, here, if we look at the exception type, GST number is not specified, shipping bill number is invalid. Now, these are the exception types. We can either exclude the vouchers, or we can accept this, or we can even correct put in the appropriate GST number and accept it. So now it's an invalid GST number which is put in. So it is validating and telling that so we might still say, okay, accept it, it's fine. So, but at the time of uploading, we get a JSON error at that time. So the whole idea is, once we do the appropriate configurations, how we get to see where we have erred or what data is not flowing to my return, focus on that, rectify that, and generate the JSON. That is very, very important. Just because of the convenience Tally offers, many a times if we don't look on these and resolve it at the first instance itself, because remember the implications are very high under the GST law. If a delay in reporting, 18% interest will come in at the time of assessments. It is checked up, and there are penal consequences, and it's a huge burden to the business which will come in after. 18% is a big interest rate. So as I started with my session beginning itself, not only the timeliness is critical, also accuracy is also critical. Both are critical. So that being the case, these validations and procedural procedures we need to follow. And many a times the students or the articles or even the staff for that matter, they might think like GST return filing is a mundane process of what is there. It's just a generate a file, upload it, and be done with it. I think so. It's a much more serious aspect than simply generating a JSON and filing it. Data validations and legal compliance per se, all these has to be looked into. Appropriate documentation should be built. In fact, Tally, when we look into the statutory reports, we can do the drill down, export it into Excel, and keep it as a documentation so that we know what are the underlying transactions which has got into that return. Because 3B is a summary level information which we provide and taxes are paid. We don't know what transactions has got into that. But so drilling down like that and maintaining working papers will definitely help, especially while filing the annual returns where we are compiling the 12 months information. We can just get lost what is there in books, what has gone into returns, and what all multiple reconciliations are required. So keeping track of and building on working papers is a very, very critical aspect. As we discussed, we're required to decide on ease of data entry versus ease of return filing. Minimum ledgers, if we have, there will be definitely only one ledger to be picked, and that data entry person will just pick that ledger and be done with it. But at the time of return filing, one has to do a comprehensive review and allocate the transactions to the respective tables and do the filing. But if I have maximum number of ledgers, let's say each variety of transaction, I'll create a separate ledger and let the data entry person do it appropriately. So instead of one ledger, there will be 10 ledgers which will be popping out. If I say carriage inwards, there are so many ledgers which comes in, and the person doing the data entry should think which particular ledger is applicable in this case. He should post it to the correct ledger. If he again makes mistake, garbage in, garbage out. Plus too many choices, again time required for posting one transaction also enhances. So we have to somewhere arrive between a trade-off between the number of ledgers and the ease of return filing as well. So I've taken one simple example of carriage inverts, so which is common to any trading business for that matter. Either I can choose to have a single ledger or carriage inverts. I will not do any configurations in GST. Just like before I was doing an accounting transaction before the implementation of GST, I'll do the same thing, maintain one single ledger. But at the time of filing the return, one person has to pull out this report, see whatever is below 750 excluded, and wherever it is exceeding, we'll have to again see whether it is anything related to agriculture products or exemption is there. And then if it is not so, then only those transactions should flow in for the reverse charge computation. So one has to, at the time of return filing, take care of all this. Take another example of, let's say we can have all 10 variety of ledgers just for carriage inverts. Forward charge 12% because some GTA might have been charging that forward charge at 12%. Some might be intrastate, some might be interstate, some might be registered, some might be unregistered. Reverse charge itself, we can have 4 categories of ledgers. And it could be exempt intrastate, interstate, non-GTA intrastate, interstate. Now imagine the position of a person doing the data entry. His head will reel. One entry, one voucher he will see, he will have to classify, okay, this voucher to which particular GL. He sees a consignment note of VRL or something. He gets confused which particular ledger I should post this. So that will be the complexity if we have multiple ledgers. But if we have a team which can be trained to identify, to post, and there are too many transactions, so that at the end of the month it will be very difficult to compile on this, fine, well enough. I mean, that is also absolutely fine. But as I said, Tally does offer, we can do so many ledger configurations, and it will be a return ready data. So once proper keying in of information is there, I'll not even look at it. Everything is configured. Reverse charges directly, it will go and sit in my return information. Well, I want to have an optimal mix of ledgers. So I will create only 3 ledgers. One is carriage inverts forward charge, where I need not do the reverse charge, but my supplier himself has charged me 12%. I will treat it as a normal purchase invoice kind of a transaction. Of course, it's an expense voucher, and claim the credits appropriately. And there are some cases for unregistered GTAs or registered GTAs where they're raising a reverse charge invoice and I am discharging the GST on it. So I will have one ledger for carriage inwards, reverse charge. There are some transactions which are exempt. So by and large, I'll have 3 ledgers and be done with it. So this is how we can arrive at and figure out the optimal mix of number of ledgers. And very important is, as and when, whenever the even expense vouchers are created under GST, initial practice of, let's say audit fee, most of the times we see that audit fee, let's say there is a GST implication on that voucher. There's the audit fees of 1 lakh rupees. So let's presume that, and 9,000 CGST, 9,000 SGST. So journal voucher, like, audit fee 1 lakh, CGST, input CGST 9,000, input SGST 9,000, and to the particular party account 1 lakh 18,000. Instead of that, we can configure the expense voucher itself under the category of purchases, and then we can generate it as part of my purchase register, because 2A reconciliation, if we go to the journal, if we enter it as journal entry, it will go and sit in my journal register. So I have to pick up data from my purchase register, journal register, everything merge and then do a comparison. So it is always advisable thing to do that. All my GST related, credit claim related ledgers, let us configure it appropriately with all the GST particulars, everything, and also use an expense voucher configured as purchase to record that. We will definitely report it under audit fee indirect expenses itself, but voucher type will be an expense voucher configured as purchase. So that all the information I need for the purpose of returns are automatically generated. So this completes our first segment of understanding the various GST implications using Tally as a tool for the GST compliance, where appropriate configurations can help us to get the information and fetch the information to a great extent return ready. Now let us move on to this tedious compliance part. In fact, if we look at the statutory and taxation option under Tally, the gateway of Tally, we have these features. We can in fact enable the TDS. So enable tax deducted at source. So this will help us to automatically set the various applicable rates. So I'll take you through each of the screenshots a little in detail. We will have the TAN registration number that will be entered here, and the deductor type, whether it is a company or an individual, so that will also be entered here. Then if TAN is not available, what is the rate? So we know that it's a 20% rate, so we can put it here. So if there is surcharge, that will be enabled. And we can also show all deductor types. Now, what are the various deductor types we will get to see here. So whether it is a company or non-company, or if it is a non-corporate, then what is the variety of the, category of the deductor or collector. So that will be available. Since it's a TDS, it will be a deductor. Then if we want to, put in the details of person responsible for this, that details also can be filled in here. All this information will be used in the challans, forms and returns. So it's very, very important that we fill in this information over here, and so that at the time of return related information which we get, these things can be captured. So after doing this initial configuration, we can even create the nature of payment. Let's say if it is a 194J, where professional charges, and now though I think after 14th May 2020, there is a 25% off, which is given by the government, where if the applicable rate of TDS is 10%, then only 7.5% can be deducted, and it will be treated as a good compliance. So we can go to this account information and the statutory info under that. Then we get something called as TDS nature of payment. So we can create as many we want. For contractual payments, 194C, we will create that. 194I, we will create that. Commission 194H, we will create that. Likewise, for each category of TDS payments, we can definitely create the specific ledger heads. We call it as TDS nature of payment master. This masters can be created, and at the time of ledger configuration, we can enable TDS and select the appropriate thing, so that while passing the journal entries or the transaction capturing, system will automatically pick based on the percentage. We need not manually compute, okay, how much to be paid to the vendor post deduction. Now, post GST, the Central Board of Direct Taxes, the CBDT, has issued a circular that GST should not be considered for the purpose of deducting the tax. So, in fact, that feature is also available in Tally. So, I took the previous example where 1,18,000 is the audit fee including GST, but I am required to do the TDS only on 1 lakh, that is a 10% of 1 lakh, which is 10,000. So not on 1,18,000. So in fact, Tally allows that to do once if it is even though there is a GST element in that, if it is configured, it will pick only on the basic amount and not on the GST value, not on the invoice value rather. So now let's say I want to create one ledger called audit fee. So I will obviously create it under indirect expense, whatever. Then type of ledger, is TDS applicable? We will say applicable. After clicking that, we get nature of payment. Under nature of payment, we get this drop down. So if we have created multiple nature of payments, we will get to see that. So if it, as I said, if it is a commission, we can select commission. Since in this case it's a professional fees, we get to choose that from the drop down available here. That's how we will be configuring the expense ledger. Now configuring the party ledger. Let's say the auditor's account is created and the deducted type is an individual or HUF, because they have different rates in particular type of transactions, like contract related. If it is individual or HUF, there's a separate rate of TDS. So for that sake, it is available here. So if it asks us whether TDS should be deducted in the same voucher, if we click it yes, so it will automatically get it reflected under that. The amount will get reflected, and on clicking enter, it will pick the appropriate ledger also. It will auto display. Of course, I can change it if I need it. And very important is, while creating the party ledger, PAN should be specified here. Otherwise, it will automatically pick the 20% rate, which is whenever there is no PAN, that rate needs to be picked. And this PAN validation also happens, like 10 characters it should be there with the appropriate validation which is required for a PAN. So then we can create this TDS ledger. So there are three things. One is the expense ledger, party ledger, and the TDS ledger. Now in the TDS ledger, again I will select which category it is, and accordingly that will get configured. And this is an example of an audit fee without GST. So we will just pass this. On clicking this transaction, automatically it will only select 45,000. These are not manually entered, but the moment I click on audit fee and put the value here, I put the party account, it will deduct 10% and 45,000 automatically gets reflected here. And the balance, it will select this, the ledger also will auto display here. If we are okay with that, we can continue, and even balancing figure will come in here. So this will speed up the process of accounting, plus also we will not skip off the TDS deduction part by manual, what do you call, missing out, human errors. All these things will get avoided. Now this is a transaction with GST. I think I missed on one point. So yeah, right, it's here. In this slide, if we see here, there is a threshold or exemption limit. So in case of professional charges, it is 30,000. Even that can be filled in here, so that let's say if that particular ledger audit fee is only 20,000, then the TDS computations will not happen. It will, entire 20,000 will get posted to the party account. But if it exceeds, let's say, as we took in the example, we took 50,000. Since it exceeded this threshold, it is automatically computing. So even that threshold configuration is there. So let's take this example of with GST, the same transaction. Here, 50,000 is my basic audit fee. We have this input CGST, input SGST. So to the party account, only 54,000 needs to be paid. And the TDS is again only 5,000 only. So the balance will be this 54,000. So how Tally computes this is, it will add the entire figure, deduct 10% from only the basic value, and automatically reflect this. So I think that's a good thing, especially after it has become 7.5%. Manually computing will definitely take some time. While arriving at the balancing figure on 50,000, we'll have to compute the 7.5%. And from 59,000 that needs to be reduced, all that. So whatever is possible to automate, I think if we do that, a lot of speed enhancement of the work also does happen. Now comes to the TDS payment transaction. So we have this option called as statutory payment. We can select this Alt S feature over here. So once we enable that, it's a statutory payment. So it will ask all these details to be incorporated, so that this information can flow into my challan. And once all these configurations are done, so we can generate these TDS reports from the statutory reports, display statutory reports and TDS reports. We get this form 26Q, 27Q as applicable based on the type of transactions, and we get this report. It says deduction at normal rate because we had a PAN for this transaction. It will get reflected in this TDS reports. So, so that being the case, in fact, we have this the return ready information, and Form 26Q related information also is available. Now we can take up the questions now, and as I conclude my session for the topic which is allotted. So I would like to use this closing remark saying that automation is the key. Wherever possible, we should try to automate so that human errors can be reduced. Plus, we can use productivity of human beings to a greater extent, and we can use our resources for quality reviews rather than this mundane, uh, routine tasks of doing the repetitive tasks. And also we can explore so many options which are already there in the various softwares we already use. Even Tally has so many features which many a times we have not explored it. We're only using the most commonly used for years together, whatever we have been using, only same features we have been using. If we can encourage the youngsters especially to explore on some features which are there in Tally, I think definitely we can enhance the productivity levels also of our teams. And training and upskilling must be an integral part, should be an ongoing basis, so that we know what's happening new or how we can effectively use the available things and all these things. So it can definitely throw light on these aspects. So we can take up questions. Komal, if we have any specific questions, we can allocate the rest of the time for the questions.
I can see a few questions in the dialog box, and also some people have raised their hands. So we can first finish the questions which have come. So one of the question being, printing and stationery is an indirect expense, then why do we create ledger and purchase account?
Yeah, what is the question?
It says that since printing and stationery is an indirect expense, then why are we creating ledger in the purchases?
Yeah, as I said, purchase is only a configuration. It is still created as an expense voucher configured as purchases. So we can create as many voucher types. We will use the printing and stationery group will be indirect expenses, but voucher type will be purchases. The reason being, I want it to flow to my ITC ledger so that my reconciliations can be easier. The two-way reconciliations or return related information keying in, all this can be easier.
Yeah. Hi. So I just wanted a further clarification. So when we create the audit fee ledger account or the printing and stationery account, we create those accounts as indirect expenses. But at the time of passing the voucher entry, we use the purchase voucher to pass the entry. That is what needs to be done.
No, see, actually, either you can use a purchase voucher, or you can create, if you want to segregate what are my purchases voucher, trading related items, or expenses voucher. Since Tally allows you create multiple voucher types, you can create that voucher type. Again, under that, it will ask what category of voucher it is. There you can select as purchase. As I said, you will get a complete input register. See, if we look at the GST perspective also, Section 35 requires, read with Rule 56, it requires a complete input tax credit register to be maintained. So if we use it as a journal voucher, all the requisite report, it is difficult to extract. Again, manually it needs to be compiled. It's only a voucher type I'm using, but it will definitely indirect expenses because it's grouped so.
So basically, a new voucher will be created under purchases for this purpose.
Yeah, there is an option in the gateway of Tally as account types. You can go and create a voucher type. We usually give the name as voucher, or we use purchase. If you do not want to create a separate voucher type, you want to use the existing voucher type itself. That purchase is only a voucher type, not the ledger group. It's not a group. It's a type of voucher.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can we export GSTR 3B and GSTR 1 with all the transactions in a single export?
Yeah, it is possible. So we have export GSTR 1 Excel format. We get that. But if we wanted, we can do an Alt F1 and export it. But if we again want a transaction level drill down, we have to go individually to those tables and export it. See, but believe me, all this will take hardly 10 minutes of time maximum. After for building the working papers, if it's really worth spending the 10 minutes of time to drill down and export the details.
Okay, the next question is, if suppose the TDS rates changes in the mid of the year, then how can we configure it in Tally?
See, I think for the transactions already over, it would have already happened. So alternatively, if we do not want to disturb that, we can create another nature of payment and say that 7.5%, probably we can say, fees for professional charges, new, something like that. We can configure the ledger and give the rate as 7.5%. I'm sure from 15th of May or 14th of May to 2020, the government announced the new rates to be effective. So since then we can, use new natures of, we can create new masters for it with the changed rate, so that old data will not also get affected. From new data, these rates can be applied.
Okay, next question is whether we have to create separate input GST and output GST ledgers. Can we do entries with only 3 ledgers, that is IGST, SGST, and CGST?
Absolutely possible. As I explained, you can have a common ledgers called CGST, SGST, IGST. Even for sales, you will use the same ledgers. Even for purchases and the expenses, wherever ITC is available, you will use the same ledgers. But the problem I see is, let's say there is a sales return. So you will have a debit in that ledger. And even if you purchase also, there will be a debit. And if you return those purchases, so purchase returns will get credited and sales will have a credit. So distinguishing between what is my sales and credit return, sales return and purchase return. So that time a little more, extraction of information and sorting it, voucher type wise, like I might have configured a credit note, a sales credit note, purchase credit note. So those additional works would be required. But yes, absolutely possible. You can use a single ledger for both output as well as input.
Okay, so for another question says, in case of an expense entry done by using the purchase voucher, will the amount of TDS comes
between Komal? Komal, your voice is breaking. I'm not able to follow the question.
Yeah, I'll just repeat again. In case of an expense entry done by using purchase voucher, will amount of TDS come automatically? And the same
not possible to follow. It's breaking. Not possible to follow. How we pass entry in case of sale of fixed assets, as we are unable to use ledger of capital account when we use any sales voucher? Is there option that we can see fixed asset ledgers while using sales voucher? I think it's a good question where people again, err off, because sale of fixed asset doesn't entirely get treated as an income for income tax purpose. Only profit or loss, profit arising on sale of fixed asset will be income. If it is a loss arising on sale of fixed asset, that will go to the debit side of my P&L account. But coming to the GST part, if I sell a fixed asset, that will be part of my supply. So what can be done is, again, a separate voucher type can be created called fixed assets, sale, under the category sales as the voucher type, but the asset will anyways be under fixed asset group. So the as far as the GST return is concerned, the data will flow in there, but it will not impact your P&L or balance sheet. It will still be asset side, balance sheet item for reporting in financials perspective. But for GST data, it will flow to the return. So that is possible. Kindly show the statutory adjustments for RCM entries. I have already shown it. Probably people are asking it. I'll just re-show that transactions. Just give me a second. I'm figuring it out. Yeah, here we have. So for an RCM transaction, I will first book the expense. I'll debit the expense and I'll also debit the input ledger, because I need to take the credit of it. And I will credit the party account because I need to pay him that 50,000 rupees. And I'll also credit the RCM output IGST account, where it should be as an output ledger and it should get reconciled. So we are using a single entry to claim the credit as well as discharge the taxes. So to report those output ledgers. I hope this is clear. Okay, this question is already answered. Expenses classified. See, don't get confused with respect to group of the ledger versus the voucher type. Group of the ledger we will not have, because we will do the accounting as required as per the accounting standards or the policies of the organization, of however it is required to be accounted. We will not disturb that because of the GST configurations thing. We will only use the specific voucher types. In fact, if we use the specific voucher types, we get it everything under the input register. Whether we need to transfer it to relevant groups as per accounting principles and methods, same is also for purchase of capital assets. Absolutely, we should definitely follow the accounting methods. If we purchase a fixed asset, we will definitely group it under fixed asset ledger, under the fixed assets group. Let's say computer purchased, the ledger would be computer, the group will be fixed assets, the voucher type will be purchases, or or we can even create a separate voucher type. But by and large, the nature of purchase type voucher, the type of voucher should be purchase type. I'll do one thing, probably if I can show it, yeah, correct. So I'll show them what is the difference, how to create the voucher types. I have some, let me see how, if I have some. Yeah, I have a demo Tally. Let me just show you. So if we go to this account information, we have this voucher types. Okay, here we can create the voucher types. Let's say I want to create an expense voucher. Okay. Okay, it's already there. Let's say fixed asset purchase. Somebody asked me how do we do this. Fixed asset purchase is the voucher type. Okay. Now under this, I will select the type as purchase. This is what I meant. This is the type of voucher. We have so many options, right? So we will select it is a purchase type voucher. So I am done with the purchase type creation. Now I will post an entry. I am doing a purchase, right? I'll click on F9. So I have my type of vouchers displayed here, purchase of fixed assets. Okay, so I will just key in whatever information is required. So let's say I purchased it on 1/1/2020, and this is my supplier. Let's say it's FA 151, whatever, and the purchase date is 1st Jan. RT Best Limited or something, Best Company, and it's a sundry creditor. So for time, I'll not do any other further configurations, and I have a computer, what I've purchased. Okay, I want to create it as a ledger, not as a stock item. I will create it as a ledger. This is under my fixed asset. So it will not disturb my grouping here. So I will create the ledger as computer. I will, group it under fixed assets. Okay, I have grouped it under fixed assets, select it. Then let's say the computer is worth 1 lakh rupees and I want to use input CGST at 9%. So since I did not configure, it is not automatically coming. Otherwise, it will come automatically, the rate. So likewise, I'm using a voucher type called purchase of fixed assets, which I created now, but grouping will be under fixed assets. So it will not disturb my, so it got saved. I hope the question is clear now.
Ma'am, we can see a raised hand, Monica Dalania. I think let's.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, Miss Monica.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, ma'am, please explain GST classifications.
In the sense?
In the sense, when we press F11, statutory details we modify. There, when we enter, set or alter GST details, then we get
Correct.
enable GST classifications, yes or no. If we press yes, so what will happen? Like what are the?
Okay, let's create one.
Hmm.
Which ledger you want to try?
Anything like audit fees, printing and stationery.
Expense. Okay, fine. So let's say legal expenses. Okay.
Okay.
So it's an indirect expense.
Yes.
So I'll select that. So inventory values are not applicable. Here we select yes. Okay. So here we need to give what is, I mean, we can HSN wise related description. For example, let's say this is, I don't remember the HS code for this. But it definitely falls under 99. So there is a specific description which is available in our annexure to notification 11. We have HSN related information. So we can put in that description here. Let's say services from advocate, something like that, which is there. Whatever description we want to put, that we can take it from. And here nature of transaction, whether it is an interstate, intrastate, that we can select. And if we do not select anything, it will sit as not applicable, so that for single ledger I can use for interstate, intrastate, all that, taxable, non-taxable, everything. So now taxable, it is under reverse charge. I click yes, and rate I will select as 18%. Got it?
Okay.
Yeah. So what was your doubt here?
No, my doubt was if we press enable GST classifications as yes, or if we press enable GST classifications as no, what difference it will make in creating the ledgers?
Yeah, because if you say applicable, that will flow to my returns. If I say not applicable, it will go to relevant for returns. I showed you that, no? I'll just show you.
No, I was asking about enable GST classifications.
No, which screen I'm not able to get your doubt. Under which screen? Here?
It's gateway
Here?
of Tally F11 features. No, not there. Gateway of
Okay.
Tally F11 features statutory and taxation.
Okay.
There.
Okay. Where is the classification?
In my Tally, it's appearing.
Because we have enabled inventory also for this. Yeah, it's inventory only.
Yes, set alter GST details. If we press yes, in my Tally, it's appearing enable GST classifications no, or yes option is there.
Can we do entries with only 3 ledgers? That is, yeah, that is possible. Case of expense entry done by using purchase voucher, will amount of TDS automatically come, and some purchase entry for GST and TDS, whether GST or 2 reports will be generated properly. Yeah, because it is TDS, if it is properly configured, then as I already showed you with the entries, it will be enabled, not a problem. Okay. We have a compliment, madam. You have left nothing to be asked. So thank you for that. And yeah, we can share the PPT to whoever asked for this. If suppose TDS rates changes in the mid of the year. Okay, we answered this. More nature of transactions have to be configured again and use a separate ledger just to avoid confusion. I would definitely do that and be safe. So this question is also answered. I've got the answer. Okay, can you share YouTube channel, please? Okay, explain GST classification. We will have to reply on this. Whether recording will be shared. Okay, thanks a lot. Kindly show statutory adjustment for RCM entries. We just show this. Fixed assets, what should be optimal way out for statutory compliance? I just even demonstrated that. Can we override HSN at entry level? Possible. It is possible. Get in mail your micro print. Okay, presentation of all slides. Okay, can we have a master list of ledgers to be created? See, it depends on business to business, and the level of detailing which would be required. So, but we have demonstrated through illustrations. Each category we have picked one example so that you can replicate based on the okay. We have another question of 194C, 30,000 and 1 lakh. Again, kindly share your mail ID, sir. We will come back to this this question on mail. Yeah, so I mean they've asked for me to share my mail ID. I can do that. So I'll be sharing my mail ID. Any questions, they can post it there. We go on classifying all expenses under purchases, whether we need to transfer it again. As I said, the answer is no, because it's only the voucher type. I showed the distinction between ledgers, groups, and voucher types. Can I get the recorded version? Okay. Very informative. Can we view this session again? Whether we have to create separate input? Okay, this question is also asked. I think pretty much we have covered all the questions which is there.
Yes, ma'am, we have. I took a count, so we have answered all the questions.
Yeah, I think Komal, whatever questions have been posted, it's been answered. You need to send me 2 mail IDs with the 2 questions which they have posted. I will answer it over mail. So any raise of hands we have? Anybody else wanting to ask any other question? We have 10 more minutes before we conclude. We can make use of this platform, and anybody wants to ask orally any questions, they can raise their hands and we can take up the questions.
I think we can conclude our session. So let's see, Ivan sir will also add a few words. So thank you, ma'am, for a very enlightening session, and thank you to all the participants. And also, I'd like there's also a question that is, can we file GSTR 9 and GSTR 9C?
Directly from Tally, I can say that we can generate some requisite reports of using Tally, but I won't say that it is a return ready GSTR 9 ready data we can generate from Tally. Not yet, I guess. I'm sure they're working on it.
Hello, Annapurna madam, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can
Yes,
hear
sir, we can hear you.
Wonderful. Just one point I wanted to have. If I understand it correctly regarding this classification point, what they mentioned.
Yeah.
The ledger classification, madam, how I understand is you can have some classifications of GST configurations. For example, you have something called repair and maintenance. For that, you will have standard GST, IGST, CGST, and the HSN. Everything will be standard for that entire activity for all ledgers which come under the repairs and maintenance. So, so once you go at the group level, it will ask you whether you need to have mark a classification there. So if you can say yes and select that particular classification, it reduces the
so it's
work
basically allowing override at the transaction level.
Yes, yes. So it allows exactly. So it allows you to.
Yeah. Okay.
Not only at the transaction level, it will also reduce the unnecessary repetitive work which you do, which you will do for every ledger if it is of the same nature. That is what my understanding is. However, people can check again on that.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
It is available from the help also.
Yeah, we can actually explore that feature, doing like what happens and how it works out, and give a appropriate reply.
Yes, this is the purpose of that. It reduces because once you select the classification, then all standard components of the classification will get immediately applied. You don't have to do it again and again.
Yeah, and another person had asked relating the TDS, no? 30,000 and 1 lakh. Both the thresholds, can it be put in Tally? So we'll have to check that part and come back on that.
Sure, ma'am. So that is noted. And for the people who are asking for the recording, so we would be sharing the link with the participants who have registered with us once the Tally Knowledge series is over. So our last session is on 28th, same time. So the session is work from home tips. So that will be taken care by CA Narsiman Ilangovan. So hope to see you all there.
Work from home and some technology aspects, how to use technology to work from anywhere. It is not work from home, basically, Komal. It is talking about work from anywhere. So whether they are, so that is one good aspect. And he will also be covering some important tips about how business owners can use Tally in terms of taking some decisions, especially in this crucial time of post COVID-19. So those are two important topics you'll be doing, and it will be of great use to all the participants. And I request for the participants to also share this to other members, co-friends, other people, and make the best out of this session. This is a wonderful session that is going to happen. Correct, Komal?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
Definitely, sir.
Yeah.
So thank you all. We would like to conclude the session now. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Special thanks to Annapurna madam on behalf of Tally. Thanks a lot, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.